Have you ever noticed how life's hardest moments feel like you're trapped in complete darkness? Like you're fumbling around in a pitch-black room, desperately searching for a way out? I know that feeling all too well, and today I'm going to share something that completely transformed how I view life's challenges. Because what if I told you that this darkness isn't what you think it is? What if these moments of despair, these periods of intense struggle, aren't actually dead ends, but doorways? Before we dive deeper into this, I want you to think about your own life for a moment. When was the last time you felt truly stuck? When did you last feel like everything was falling apart? Hold on to that feeling, because by the end of this video, you're going to see it in a completely different light. For me, it was 3 years ago. I had just lost what I thought was my dream job. The company I'd poured my heart and soul into for 5 years decided to restructure. And just like that, I was out. But it wasn't just the job. My relationship was crumbling, my savings were dwindling, and my confidence, well, let's just say it was at an all-time low. I remember sitting in my car at 2 a.m., rain hammering against the windshield, scrolling through job listings I couldn't even focus on. You know that feeling when your mind is racing so fast that everything becomes a blur? That was me. Rock bottom, or at least that's what I thought it was at the time. But here's what nobody tells you about rock bottom. It's not just a place where things end, it's where transformations begin. And I know, that sounds like something you'd read on a cheesy motivational poster. But stay with me. Because what I'm about to share isn't just feel-good fluff. It's backed by science, proven by history, and I'm willing to bet it's something you've actually experienced yourself, even if you didn't realize it at the time. You see, there's a fascinating paradox about human psychology that most people never realize. Our moments of greatest growth, our most profound transformations don't happen when we're comfortable. They don't happen when everything's going perfectly. Think about it like a seed. Where does it begin its journey? In darkness, buried beneath the soil, it has to crack open, break apart, before it can even begin to grow. This isn't just a pretty metaphor. The scientific community has a term for this: post-traumatic growth. It's the positive psychological change that can occur after periods of crisis and trauma. And the numbers are staggering. Studies have found that between 60 to 80% of people who experience trauma report some form of positive change afterward. But here's the key. These changes don't happen despite the darkness. They happen because of it. Let me share something I've never talked about before. Remember that night in my car? Well, what I didn't mention was that it was actually the 3rd night in a row I'd done this, just sitting there feeling completely lost. But on that 3rd night, something shifted. I started thinking about my grandfather, who lost everything in his home country during wartime, moved to a new country with nothing, and built a successful business from scratch. I thought about how he used to tell me, "Life will break you sometimes. That's not negotiable. What is negotiable is how you put yourself back together." At the time, I'd just nod and think, yeah, old man wisdom. But sitting in that car, those words hit differently. And that's when I started noticing something. The more I looked into it, the more I realized that history is absolutely filled with examples of people who used their darkest moments as catalysts for extraordinary change. Walt Disney was fired from a newspaper for lacking imagination. Can you imagine? The man who would go on to create one of the most imaginative entertainment empires in history was told he didn't have enough imagination. Steve Jobs was publicly ousted from Apple, the company he founded. He later said that getting fired was the best thing that could have happened to him. The heaviness of being successful was replaced by the lightness of being a beginner again, he said. Oprah Winfrey faced abuse and poverty before becoming one of the most influential people in the world. J.K. Rowling was a divorced single mother on welfare when she wrote Harry Potter. The list goes on and on. But here's what's really interesting. When you start looking closely at these stories, you begin to notice a pattern. This brings us to what I call the doorway principle. Through years of studying these transformational journeys and experiencing my own, I've discovered that every crisis presents 3 specific doors of opportunity. Let me break these down for you because understanding these doors will completely change how you view difficult times. The first is the door of self-discovery. This is perhaps the most powerful door, but it's also the one people resist the most. Why? Because it usually opens when everything you thought you knew about yourself gets challenged. When I lost my job, I had to face some hard truths about how much of my identity I'd tied to my career. I had to ask myself, who am I without this title, without this role? And you know what? That questioning led me to rediscover parts of myself I'd completely forgotten about, like my love for teaching and mentoring others, which, ironically, is exactly what I'm doing right now with this channel. The door of self-discovery isn't just about learning new things about yourself. It's about remembering who you were before the world told you who you should be. The second door is what I call the door of release. This one's fascinating because it often feels like loss at first. You're forced to let go of something. A job, a relationship, a belief system, an identity. But here's the thing about letting go. It frees up your hands to grab onto something new. When I was fired, I had to let go of my 5-year plan, my career identity, my vision of success. And yes, that was terrifying, but that empty space created room for new possibilities I couldn't have imagined before. Think about it like this. Imagine you're holding onto a rope dangling over a canyon. There's another rope swinging toward you that could take you to where you need to go. But to grab it, you have to let go of the rope you're holding first. That moment between ropes, that's the door of release. It's terrifying, but it's also where the magic happens. The third door is the door of redirection. This is where it gets really interesting. Often, what feels like an obstacle is actually life's way of pointing you in a better direction. Remember that job I lost? Well, if I hadn't lost it, I would never have started this channel. I would never have discovered that my true passion wasn't in climbing the corporate ladder, but in helping others navigate their own difficult transformations. There's an old Zen story about a man being chased by a tiger. He runs to the edge of a cliff and sees a vine growing down the side. He climbs down the vine, but then notices another tiger waiting at the bottom. And if that wasn't bad enough, he sees 2 mice, one black, one white, starting to gnaw through the vine. But then he notices something else. Growing out of the cliff face, right next to him, is a wild strawberry. He plucks it and eats it, and it's the sweetest thing he's ever tasted. The point isn't that the tigers aren't real or that the danger isn't real. The point is that sometimes being stuck between a rock and a hard place forces us to notice opportunities we would have missed otherwise. That's the door of redirection. Now, there's a concept in spiritual traditions called the dark night of the soul. It's described as a period of tremendous difficulty that precedes spiritual awakening, but you don't have to be spiritually inclined to appreciate the wisdom here. Think about it. Every hero's journey includes a moment of absolute despair before the breakthrough. Every butterfly must go through the darkness of the chrysalis before emerging transformed. But here's where most people get stuck. They know this intellectually, but when they're in the midst of their own darkness, they forget. They panic, they resist. And look, I get it. When you're in pain, when you're scared, when everything feels like it's falling apart, it's really hard to maintain perspective. That's why I want to share 4 specific practices that have been absolute game changers for me and countless others I've worked with. These are practical tools you can use right now, no matter what kind of darkness you're facing. The first is what I call the reflection practice. Every evening, take just 5 minutes to write down 3 things. What challenged you today? What did that challenge reveal about you? And what strengths did you discover you had? This isn't just journaling, it's training your mind to look for the doors in the darkness. The second practice is the question shift. This is powerful. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" ask, "What is this preparing me for?" Instead of, "How can I get out of this?" ask, "What can I get out of this?" The quality of your life is determined by the quality of your questions. When you shift your questions, you shift your focus. And when you shift your focus, you change what you see. The third practice is what I call future self-dialogue. This one might sound a bit out there, but stick with me. Take a moment to imagine yourself 5 years from now, looking back at this current challenge. What advice would your future self give you? What would they want you to know? What would they see that you might be missing? This practice helps you tap into wisdom you already have, but might not be accessing. The fourth practice is the growth map. This is where you actually track your transformation. Create a simple chart. On one side, list your current challenges. On the other side, list potential opportunities for growth in each challenge. Update it regularly. This isn't about toxic positivity, it's about training yourself to see the complete picture. And that brings me to something really important. This isn't about denying the pain or pretending everything is fine. I'm not suggesting you should be happy about difficult times or that you should just look on the bright side. That's toxic positivity, and it doesn't help anyone. What I am suggesting is something much more powerful, that you can acknowledge the pain, feel it fully, while simultaneously maintaining the awareness that something larger is at work. That every breakdown has the potential for a breakthrough. That every crisis contains within it the seeds of opportunity. The next time you find yourself in darkness, and let's be honest, there will be a next time, remember this: you're not in a dead end, you're in a doorway. The question isn't whether there's a way forward, there always is. The question is, will you have the courage to walk through it? Because here's the truth, and I want you to really let this sink in. Your darkest moments aren't punishments. They're not cosmic accidents. They're not even obstacles, really. They're invitations. Invitations to become more of who you really are. So let me ask you one final question. What if the darkness you're experiencing right now isn't a wall, but a door waiting to be opened? What possibilities might be waiting on the other side? If this resonated with you, hit that subscribe button and share this video with someone who might need to hear it. Leave a comment below sharing your story. What doorway did your darkness lead you to? Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear right now. Remember, the darkness isn't your destination, it's your doorway. And sometimes the darkest doors lead to the brightest futures. I'll see you in the next video.